I have a confession, and I've never said this out loud before. I never wanted to be a doctor. Not really, but for 7 years, I lived like I did. 7 years ago, I was full of fire. The kind of fire that keeps you up at 2 a.m., eyes burning, heart racing, chasing something you don't even understand fully. I thought I was building a future. I thought I was chasing a dream. I thought I had purpose. I said all the right things, smiled at all the right moments, wore the white coat like it meant something holy. And every time someone called me brilliant or gifted, I swallowed the lie like medicine. I worked harder than most, gave up weekends, sleep, birthdays, even people I loved, all in the name of this dream. A dream that wasn't mine. A dream I never chose. But no one noticed the parts of me I buried to keep going. And I was too afraid to say I was breaking because I was the one everyone believed was becoming someone. At first, I thought it was just exhaustion. Maybe I was burned out, overworked, underslept. That's what everyone says, right? You just need a break. But this wasn't tiredness. It was emptiness, the kind that seeps in quietly. The kind you don't notice until it starts eating at the corners of your joy. It started in the silence. After the exams were passed, the internships survived, the praise given. And still, I would lie in bed at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling, wondering why I felt nothing. I kept waiting for the feeling to hit, that deep satisfaction they all promised. But it never came. Not after the white coat ceremony. Not after my first patient. Not after my name was finally followed by doctor. Instead, it felt like I was walking through someone else's life. I look in a mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. Not because I looked different, but because I couldn't remember who I was before all of this began. And yet, everyone kept clapping, saying how proud they were, how lucky I was, how I was living the dream. So I clapped too. I clapped for the version of me they believed in. The version who never flinched, never questioned, never broke. But deep inside, my soul was whispering something I didn't have the courage to hear. Something like, "This isn't it, is it?" My body started rejecting it long before my mind did. I was always tired, always heavy, the kind of heavy that doesn't go away with sleep, the kind of tired that isn't physical, but spiritual. And for the first time, I wondered if I had spent years building a future I never truly wanted. A future that looked like success, but felt like a cage I'd built with my own hands. But I didn't leave, I didn't even slow down. Because admitting that I'd spent 7 years chasing something I didn't want, felt more terrifying than staying in something that was quietly killing me. So I did what most people do when the truth starts whispering too loud. I drowned it out. I told myself I was just overwhelmed. That it was just a phase. That every dream feels heavy before it feels worth it. I forced a smile back on. I doubled down on the routine. I convinced myself that fulfillment was just around the next corner, the next patient, the next paycheck, the next achievement. And besides, how could I walk away now? How do you look your parents in the eye? The ones who brag about you at family dinners, who called you doctor with pride stitched into every syllable, and tell them you want out. How do you say, "I know you're proud, but I'm miserable"? How do you confess that the very path they celebrated might be the reason you've lost pieces of yourself you can't even name anymore? The shame was suffocating, not just because I felt like I was failing, but because my whole identity was wrapped in this dream. This title, this version of me, I had built for years. To walk away felt like erasing everything I had become. And even though my soul was aching, I clung to the dream harder, not because I loved it, but because I was terrified of what would be left of me if I let it go. But no matter how much I tried to silence it, the question kept returning, not as a scream, but as a whisper in the quiet moments between tasks. What if this isn't where I'm supposed to be? At first, I hated the thought, because if that were true, then what had I done for the last 7 years? What had I sacrificed for? Why did I give up my youth, my peace, my joy, for something that never really belonged to me? But the more I let it sit, the more I realized something I didn't choose this dream. I inherited it from a culture that told me certain careers meant success, from a society that praised ambition but never questioned the cost, from a family that equated titles with worth. I was never taught to ask, "What do I love?" I was taught to ask, "What will make them proud?" And so I performed. I became everything they celebrated, while quietly killing off the parts of me they might never understand. But what if that doesn't make me weak? What if that just means I'm finally waking up? Waking up to the truth that pleasing others is not the same as fulfilling your purpose. That being praised doesn't mean you're aligned. That success built on fear isn't success. It's a slow kind of emotional death. And maybe, just maybe, the pain I'm feeling isn't failure. It's my soul trying to lead me home. There was no breakdown, no dramatic collapse, just silence. The kind of silence that wraps itself around you when the noise of pretending finally stops. I remember the exact moment it happened. I was sitting in a white, sterile room, another late shift, another chart, another heartbeat on a monitor. But this time, it felt like I was the one flatlining inside. And for the first time in years, I whispered the truth I'd been burying. I don't want to do this anymore. Not just a night shift, not just the exhaustion, the whole thing. Medicine was never my calling. It was my shield, my ticket to admiration, my excuse to be respected without ever being known. And once I said it, really said it, something inside me cracked open. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just honest. With myself. For the first time in 7 years. I had spent almost a decade building a life that looked good on paper, while quietly starving for something I couldn't name. And that night, in the middle of fluorescent lights and fake smiles, I finally admitted it. I made a mistake. Not because I failed, but because I succeeded in becoming someone I was never meant to be. And strangely, that truth didn't destroy me. It set me free. But even after I admitted it, even after the truth settled into my bones, I didn't walk away. Not yet. Because leaving meant destroying the version of me everyone else still believed in. There was pressure, not always spoken, but always present. My parents didn't say it directly, but their eyes still lit up every time someone said, "Your child must make you so proud." And I didn't have the heart to take that pride away from them. Colleagues, they saw me as strong, driven, the one who had it figured out. If they knew I was struggling, they'd call it weakness. Or worse, ungratefulness. And then there was me. My own voice was the loudest. The one saying, "You've come too far to throw it all away now. Everyone sacrifices something. This is just yours. What if you leave and end up with nothing?" I started comparing my pain to others' applause. And that comparison was a prison. Because every time I saw someone thrive in the same field that suffocated me, I told myself, "See? You're the problem, not the dream." That's the hardest part, isn't it? When comfort disguises itself as loyalty, when fear dresses up as logic, when you start mistaking a slow death for stability. I wanted to leave, but I also wanted not to be wrong, not to disappoint, not to start over. I wanted freedom, but I also wanted certainty. And so I hovered between the truth and the trap, between who I was and who I might become. If only I had the courage to let it all go. You'd think that once you admit the truth, things would get easier. They didn't. They got heavier, because now I could see the lie, but I was still living in it. My body knew before my mind caught up. I couldn't sleep, not properly. Even on days I was physically drained, I'd lie awake with thoughts spinning like sirens. "You're wasting your life. You're a fraud. You don't belong anywhere now." Anxiety became my morning coffee. Every day, I'd wake up with a tight chest, a knot in my stomach, already dreading the performance I had to put on just to make it through the day. And then came the changes I didn't ask for, the friends who slowly pulled away when I stopped playing strong, the colleagues who didn't understand why I wasn't grateful, the jobs I started and left, trying to escape, trying to fit, only to realize it wasn't the work that was wrong. It was me. I was outgrowing the version of myself they all still expected to see. Telling my parents was like grieving a death. Not because they yelled, not because they disowned me, but because they looked at me like I had become a stranger. My father didn't say much. He just nodded, slowly. But I could see the silence in his eyes, the disappointment he didn't know how to hide. My mother? She asked if I was okay. But underneath her words, I could feel the question she didn't dare voice. After everything, why would you throw it away? They weren't cruel, but they didn't understand. To them, I was walking away from stability, success, security, everything they dreamed of for me. And I can't blame them. They came from struggle. Their version of love was protection, and in their eyes, this dream was supposed to protect me. But they didn't see the cost. The insomnia, the anxiety, the emptiness that no title could fill. So I stood there, in the middle of their pride and my truth, knowing that for the first time in my life, I had to disappoint the people I loved, just to finally be honest with myself. There were nights I'd sit in the parking lot, engine off, hands on the wheel, just breathing through the panic. Not because something was wrong, but because nothing made sense anymore. I felt like I was unraveling. The identity I wore for years, it didn't fit anymore. But the new one, I hadn't built it yet. That's the part no one tells you about. When you leave the wrong life, you don't instantly find the right one. You float. You fall. You feel like a ghost in your own story. But somewhere in that darkness, a quieter voice started forming. Not loud, not demanding, just steady. Keep going. This is not your ending. One morning, I didn't wake up to panic. No racing thoughts. No tight chest. Just quiet. Not the heavy kind, but the kind that feels like a soft sunrise after years of thunder. Something in me had shifted. Not loudly. Not with some big, brave act, but quietly, like a knot that had finally loosened in my chest. I had stopped apologizing for being tired, for not fitting into the life I built, for wanting something different. And in that stillness, I realized something no one had ever told me. Self-forgiveness is a form of freedom, not the kind others give you, but the kind you give yourself when you stop needing permission to be honest. I look back at the years I lost, and instead of anger, I felt compassion for the version of me who did what he thought was right, who just wanted to be loved, who chased a dream not to live, but to be seen. I didn't hate him. I understood him. And in that understanding, I forgave him for staying too long, for not speaking up sooner, for carrying so much in silence. And with that forgiveness came something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Not because I had everything figured out, but because I had finally let go of the need to prove anything to anyone, including myself. I was no longer a prisoner to the dream. I was finally free to live. Peace didn't come all at once. It came in small, quiet moments, like making my own coffee without rushing, like sleeping through the night for the first time in months, like looking in the mirror and not flinching. I went back to school, a completely different path, one I had secretly loved for years but never allowed myself to explore. Psychology, the study of the very thing I'd been battling all along: the human mind, the heart, the hidden wounds we carry in silence. I started from scratch. No applause, no spotlight, just a hunger for real meaning. And slowly, things began to grow. Financially, I struggled in the beginning. But this time, the hustle didn't drain me. It built me. Because now I knew what I was fighting for. Not image, but truth. Emotionally, I found peace in places I never looked before. I picked up hobbies I once said I didn't have time for. I reconnected with friends who saw me, not the title I wore. And for the first time, I started laughing without guilt, smiling without effort. Spiritually, I wasn't running anymore. I sat with my thoughts. I prayed not for success, but for clarity. And the more I slowed down, the more alive I felt. And my parents? They didn't fully understand at first, but they saw the light come back into my eyes. And eventually, they stopped asking about status and started asking how I was really doing. That meant everything. I used to think starting late was failure. But now I know starting late with truth is better than arriving early with a lie. And I'm not behind. I'm finally aligned. One day, I found myself in the same hospital hallway where it all began. Same smell, same buzz of overhead lights, same worn out faces. But something was different. Me, I wasn't there to perform. I wasn't there to prove anything. I was just passing through. And instead of panic, I felt peace. It's strange, isn't it? How the places that once felt like cages can become mirrors, not of your past, but of how far you've come. Someone asked me, "Do you ever regret walking away?" I smiled, not because it was easy, but because I know now regret isn't staying too long. It's knowing you should have left and never giving yourself a chance. I used to think strength looked like endurance, sacrificing more, lasting longer, staying silent. But now I know real strength is presence. Being here, in your own body, in your own mind, fully alive in the life you chose, even if it looks nothing like what you planned. I'm not perfect, but I'm honest. And that honesty has built a peace no title ever gave me. I'm not rich, but I'm full of purpose, of clarity, of breath. And most of all, I'm no longer afraid of disappointing others, because the one person I used to betray the most was myself, and I finally chose him. The funny thing is, I didn't change the world. I didn't become famous. I didn't need to, because I became something more rare than any title I once chased. I became myself, and if I could go back, I wouldn't change the struggle. I wouldn't erase the years. I'd just whisper this question to my younger self. What would you do if no one was watching? Not to rebel, not to disappear, but to finally show up as you, not as a performance. Because the truth is, most of us are tired, not from work, but from pretending, from chasing applause that feels good for a second and then leave you emptier than before. So I ask you now gently, who would you be if you weren't trying to prove anything? If no one clapped? If no one validated it? If it didn't go viral? Would you still do it? Would you still be it? That's when you know you're finally walking toward yourself. And if you're still stuck, still silently screaming inside a life that looks good but feels wrong, let me say this clearly. You are not weak for wanting more. You're not broken because your dream changed. You're just ready to live aligned instead of admired. And if that costs you some people, some titles, some timelines, then so be it. Because the cost of betraying yourself is far greater. And you're done paying that price. If this spoke to a part of you you've been afraid to look at, you're not alone. And if you're still on that silent journey, unsure, unseen, unraveling, then stick around. This space was built for you. Not the version you perform, but the one you cry with behind closed doors. The real you. So if you felt this, don't just scroll. Share it with someone who's tired of pretending. And stay with us. Because around here, we don't chase perfection. We rewrite the stories that almost broke us.